everyone. Morning. Welcome to the CFO Annual Symposium, Financing the Future. And that means taking the time to invest in yourselves today for better returns tomorrow. Thanks to all of you who were able to join us this morning for the awards ceremony. That was a tremendous experience. But I'll just kick this off really quickly today by introducing and we have a great lineup for you. Really good, relevant topics, excellent plenary speakers coming up. So please take advantage of this. If you look at the agenda and you see some of the different breakout sessions, if you have people in your organization that you know would benefit from one or two of those sessions, get them down here, right? All people are welcome. You don't have to be registered. A couple of those sessions could be really relevant to some of your colleagues. Tell them to get down here, even if it's for 2 sessions in the afternoon tomorrow. That's going to be what's going to be meaningful to them. We definitely want to get as many people in here as possible. And it's a packed house today. Woohoo! So thank you all for joining us. It's my honor to kick this off by turning it over to our first keynote speaker, a great leader and person whom I'm truly honored to call a great personal friend also. Turn it over without further ado to Chip Fulgham.
Is it okay if I stay down here? You good with that? All right. Didn't matter because I was going to do it anyways. So, I appreciate the opportunity to chat with you guys for a few minutes about not only financing the future, but what it should say up there is daring to win. And what do I mean by daring to win? I mean taking risk. Because in order for you to finance the future and to do things better, we're going to have to be innovative. And in order to be innovative, you're going to have to take risk. Now, we take risk every day, right? Like, just a minute ago, I walked into the restroom with this mic. Having done it before, I knew to turn it off this time. Because a couple of times I forgot to turn it off, and the audience got a big kick out of what I said and did. So, simple little things like that, right? We take risk every day. Think about, where's my little, see if you can make it go. In Washington, D.C., do you take a risk every time you step out into that crosswalk? This fascinates me, by the way. Read all the stuff up there. D.C. law says stop. Now, either the people in Washington, D.C. can't read, or they think that's a guide. Because one of the biggest risks you take every day is when you step out into that pedestrian crosswalk and a car is coming, right? But you do it every day. Make it go back to the first one. Can you make it go back to the first one? How many decisions do you make every day? Anybody know? Is it 1,000?
Yes.
How about 5,000?
Yes.
How about 10?
Yes.
20? You make 34,000 decisions a day. And about 33,999 are risk-based decisions. So taking risk is easy, right? It's no problem at all. You do it every day. Right? Come up here, Naomi. Let's do a little test. I mean, you take risk all the time. You've seen this before, right? Turn around. Turn your back. Turn around. No. Not like a princess. Here, do it again. Yeah, that's not what we were going to do. You stand like that. Now just fall backwards. I got you. Oh, I wouldn't do it if I were you. Did you see what she did? She started to do it, and then she thought about it a minute and went, oh, heck no. You can go back and sit down. Why not? Why didn't you do it?
I trusted you, but then you gave me that look.
She thought, hold on. I don't need the lights if y'all don't. Oh, all right. So, did you hear what she said? She said, I trusted you till I didn't. We're going to come back to that again and again when we talk about risk. She was ready to do it, then she got afraid. For good reason, because I was going to watch her fall. No, I was not going to do that. So let's talk about why are we so afraid in the government to take risk? What are we afraid of? Oh yeah. Y'all know those Monday morning quarterbacks, don't you? They got 3 letters in their name. The G, the A, and the O. And the O and the I and the G. By the way, the OIG is not here, are they? GAO here? They wouldn't say if they were. Hiding back there in the back. So you got a lot of Monday morning quarterbacks who are itching to watch you try something and fail because that's the Full Employment Act for them, isn't it? Because they're going to tell you what you should have done after the fact. And if you're real lucky, you'll get to go see some of those 535 members that you elected in a session where they get to ask you a bunch of questions. By the way, the best part of a hearing is what? When it's over. So we got a lot of Monday morning quarterbacks. Whose money is it? Whose money is it? It's not your money. Well, a little bit of it is. It's taxpayers' money. The reason we got so many rules in place is because it's not our money. And we got to double down to make sure we do it right every time. So we got to do things in triplicate. We got to have all these controls. Because we got to make sure we're spending somebody else's money right. And we are definitely afraid we're going to get it wrong. We're afraid to fail, aren't we? She got afraid. It's human nature to be afraid to fail. Next, what does failure often look like in the government's eyes? Poor performance, right? We misinterpret what I call innovative failure with poor performance. There's a big difference between the two. But we're afraid we're going to get labeled as that poor performer. Our little score will go down. And make the other one come up. If we fail, we might not get promoted. If we color inside the lines, which when you think about the government, we've been taught from day one to color inside the lines. The government is very compliant oriented. We like people that color inside the lines. And because of that, we're afraid of taking risk. All those things get in the way. And they're all legitimate. So what are we going to do about it? If you want to finance the future and you want to be innovative and stay on the path that you're on, what are some things we can do about it? So, we can start with hiring talent. Nothing to me is more important than hiring talent. As I tell people all the time, when I become the dumbest guy in the room, which doesn't take a lot, we have hired the right people. And hiring talent matters. And you don't need to hire a lot of it. You just need the right talent. Now you heard them today talking about, Phil was reading off some award and talking about we're the only department in the federal government that's required by law to get a clean opinion over our internal controls over financial reporting. Which, by the way, is a good law. And I don't say that often, but it's a good law. Every department should be required to get that clean opinion, because what it tells you is that every day you've got assurance that you've got sound business processes in place to make sure that we are accurately accounting for every dollar that the taxpayers have allowed us to spend on their behalf. So it's a good law. Now, when the department was formed, do you know how many material weaknesses we had? Anybody know? We had 18. Does anybody know what a material weakness is? I didn't really know. I just knew it was bad. We had 18 of them. In 2008, we had 10. Now we have 2. For the last few years, or the first few years when I got to the department, we struggled. We struggled to figure out what to do and how to make progress on the hard ones. Because we had knocked the easy ones out of the way. Now we were down to the last 4 or 5 and they were hard. So you know what we did? We hired talent. She's right there. Stand up, Susie. Sucks to sit on the front row. We hired Susie Dawsey. And Susie Dawsey came in with a new, innovative approach. She could have easily said, hey, we're just color inside the lines, we'll keep at it, you know, we'll play whack-a-mole with the findings, and we'll be doing this for the next 50 years. She built a couple of maturity models with her team that said, this is what we got to focus on. She said, these are the key controls, and we went after it. And we're going to get that clean opinion in 2020. So hiring talent matters. Next, got to have a plan. You need to map out what you're going to do. Now that sounds good, right? But we get caught in the tyranny of the president all the time. And because of that, we forget to build a plan. We just start doing. You got to have a good plan. Next. You got to think outside the box. You got to think differently. Now that's hard, right? I got a great example of that. Y'all probably don't know it, but in 2014, the Congress gave us the authority to build a new personnel ecosystem for cybersecurity folks. Because the Congress said you're not getting them fast enough, you're not paying enough for them, you need to do something different. Now, the next day after they gave us that, they also sent us a letter saying, have you implemented it yet? So we were under a lot of pressure to implement it quick. Now the easy thing to do would have been to go over, because DOD had this authority, and just mimic what DOD did. But when we went and looked at what DOD did, it looked a lot like Title V, which is what most of you folks are under today. And Title V is a system that was actually developed in the 1860s, believe it or not. Hasn't been updated since 1947. So we hired someone named Erin Hayes and her little sidekick Travis, 2 people, and said, you have a blank sheet of paper, go forth and build a new personnel system. Not IT system, the whole thing, from the time we think we have a need till we get someone in the seat. You got a blank sheet of paper, and we will keep Congress off your backs. Y'all know how long it usually takes to do something like that? It takes 7 to 10 years typically to implement a new personnel system like that. Congress wanted it in a week. So we would get nasty letters, they'd call us over, we get to testify, but we stuck with it. And if it wasn't for the shutdown in 2019, we'd pay the first person under that system in roughly 5 years after we started. And that system is going to revolutionize, and I don't use that word very often, how we acquire people, how we assess people, how we pay people, how we reward people, how we let people move. It's going to do away with PDs and classification system. All the things that you guys bitch, moan, and complain about. And rightfully so. All because we thought about it differently. Travis isn't a personnel guy. Neither is Aaron. They just decided, hey, you give us this opportunity, we're going to take it. So in early 2020 now, because of the shutdown, we'll pay the first person under that system. So you got to be willing to think differently. Next. What's after that one? All right, make those two go away. Can you go backwards?
Yeah.
Go backwards again. Go backwards one more time. Yeah, I forgot to tell you something about planning. So, you know, you heard about those 6 clean audits, right? You heard about that. Before we got 6 clean audits, and by the way, you know, the first clean audit we got, you know how long I've been on the job as the acting CFO? Like 2 weeks. I was like, what's so hard about this? So I asked Larry Becker. Does anybody remember Larry Becker? He used to be Jeff before Jeff was Jeff. I asked Larry, I said, you guys were struggling with this audit thing. What'd you do? And Larry said something that I thought was pretty interesting. He said, well, the first thing we did was start planning for success, not failure. Because every year, up until that point, when they would talk about the audit, they'd go, all right, we know we're not going to get it, but let's see if we can minimize the damage. And Larry said, nope. Let's start thinking about how we can do this. And he called it an elephant. And how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right? And slowly but surely we built a plan and started building on success. We actually did take something we knew we could get done and do it first. Because people would go, see, they are doing it. And then the momentum built to the point where the United States Coast Guard was willing to go out and send their people out to boats, to planes, to depots, and look for equipment and mark it down on an inventory sheet. That literally occurred. That was the commitment that the department got because they built a plan and built on that success. Now you can go forward. So rewarding failure. What I call rewarding innovative failure. If we want our people to take chances and take risks, we got to be willing to reward it. Now that sounds good and brief well in here, doesn't it? I can say it in here. It's pretty darn hard out in the real world, isn't it? Remember all those things I put up there about what failure looks like? Why are we risk averse? That's the real world. So how do we build a culture where we're willing to reward failure? Think about it. What did you ever learn from success? What did you learn? What did you learn when you failed? Think about it. So I always tell people, whenever you want to learn about how to go about helping people achieve innovation and risk-taking, go read a book by John Maxwell. It's called Failing Forward. Anybody ever read that book? You need to go read that book. It's a book about a bunch of folks who took risks and failed time and time again, and you'd recognize most of their names. Like, he wrote about a guy who ran for Congress, and he lost. Started a business, it went bankrupt. Got married, she went crazy. Ran for the Senate, and he lost. Then he ran for president, and what happened? He won. Y'all know who he is. Now, I always tell people, in today's Twitter, Fox News world, would he have survived? Heck no. Once that crazy wife was up on the screen, it was over with. He learned every time he failed. He never gave up. You've got to be willing to fail because you learn from it. So, One of the best examples I know is we have this thing called the Procurement Innovation Lab. And we set it up so that folks could go into a lab environment and try new things to speed up procurements. And so we were going to develop this big software development contract. It got a lot of publicity. It was a multi-million-dollar effort. And we did a lot of cool things. We did stuff like, we did video presentations. We actually made companies come in and write code in front of us. A lot of really cool stuff. And then we got to the end. And just like her, we got afraid. We got afraid of failing. So you know what we did? We wrote an 800-page tech assessment. Now, does that sound innovative to you? It was not. Do you think in that 800 pages we got it all right? We did not. Do you think something else occurred after we made the contract award? What do you think happened? The big P word. We got protested. Do you think we won? We didn't. So typically what happens, big giant procurement effort, months of effort, and it goes south. What typically happens? Who's coming? Remember those two little Monday morning quarterbacks? Itching to get in there. Remember those 535 members of Congress and their staff? Think they might want to have a conversation about it? None of that occurred. You know why? Because the chief procurement officer and myself in a big audience just like this got asked about that procurement right after it went south. And I said simply this: I'm very proud of those people. They took a lot of risk, came up with a lot of new innovations that will work, did some things we shouldn't have done. We'll learn from them and move on. And actually, we put those people in for a management award and a secretary's award. We were that proud of them because they stuck their neck out and were willing to try. And we wanted them to know, when you get to the 5-yard line, you got to keep going. Don't revert back to being afraid. So, next. Oh yeah. This one's hard in the government, isn't it? You ever think about the hiring process? So you get this cert. It's got 100 names on it. Some personnel person who's overworked and underpaid and underloved tries to cull it down to about 50. Then they hand it to you. And then you got to look through it. And all you got's 3 or 4 pieces of paper on each person, right? Says the jobs they did. And so you get it down to about 4 or 5. And then you talk to them for 30 minutes. And then you call a couple of people and they say, yep, right person, and you hire them. Now, do you think in that process you're always going to get it right? No. You're not. Do you also believe that 99.9% of the people who come to work every day want to do the right thing for the right reason? Now, there's 0.1% of you that just come to work every day to jack it up and watch the chaos. A couple of you right now are going, yep, that's me. So if you got people who want to do the right thing for the right reason, and they're not successful in the job they're in, we got to figure out how to help them be successful, right? And we got to figure out what the root cause is, because 5 times out of 10 it's got nothing to do with the job. It may be the work environment. It may be the commute. It may be this isn't what I thought it was going to be. It may be I'm a square peg trying to get in a round hole. Now, typically, when people fail, what do? We reassign them, or my favorite, we pip them. Love the pip. It's great. It's a great tool. It's a sledgehammer. I always find it fascinating. Now, see, I can say this. I only got 2 days left here in the government. Find it fascinating. When we've got folks who aren't performing, we believe when we hand them this performance improvement plan, it's like the tablets coming down from on high, and all of a sudden it's going to go, that's what you wanted me to do. Had no idea. What we got to do is sit down and talk with them and figure out what the root cause of the issue is. The other thing we got to do is resist the urge to do what she just said, which is reassign. I'll give you a great example. All of y'all know our efforts with financial systems modernization, right? I mean, the department's we've been at the plate how many times now? Waiting to hit the pitch. So we went into this thing with IBC. And for a lot of reasons, it didn't work. And because it didn't work, remember those Monday morning quarterbacks? Sent me a nice letter saying on the such and such of May, we would request the honor of your presence in front of us. Now, typically, a good move at this point would be, I got to fire someone. Because the guy who was in charge of that committee, every time I sat in front of him, he goes, who'd you hold accountable? Who'd you fire? So that would have been the easy thing to do. Christine Rodriguez, who I don't think is here, I could have just fired her. She was running the program. That would have been easy to do. Christine, you're out. Reassigned. I can go up and tell him, hey, I held him accountable. Instead, what we did was we said, Christine, they got some things wrong on the IBC side, and the government got some things wrong. What did we learn from it? So we built a new program office, we streamlined the acquisition process, and we're going to deliver on FSM. Because she was the right person for the job then, and she's the right person for the job now. So we, as a government, got to resist the urge to give up on people. Next. And you got to know them, right? Just real quick, you got to know if they're willing to take risk. Everybody's not built that way. A lot of people are very risk averse. What's it take to get to know them? Say it again. Time. Yeah, when you got promoted the last time and you got the extra $1.50, like we said before, they gave you extra 30 minutes. Oh, they didn't. That's right. And the more you move up, the more you're going to have to give up. And what you're going to give up is your time. And you're going to have to sacrifice because you got to get to know people. And you know how that goes. Like Lori, my chief of staff. You know, when I'm riding with her somewhere, it just starts with what she did this weekend, and then she tells me about the dog she's got, and then it just keeps going on and on and on. And I'm like, I got email to do. But you got to get to know them, right? Because if you know them, then you can play to their strengths, and you can figure out which ones are really ready to take that risk you want them to take. And those that aren't, you got to coach them up. And we got to help one another because that's really hard. Next. At the end of the day, it boils down to one simple issue. Like everything you do every day boils down to leadership. You want to change the outcome? Change the leadership. Improve the leadership. Remember where we started here? And she said to me, I don't trust you. I did, but I don't. Why is that in the federal government? Why don't we trust our leaders? Why don't we trust the organization? Could it be at times they don't have your back? It's easy to have your back like today, right? It's easy to stand up there today and go, oh, we're so proud of you guys. Look at all the great stuff you did. But when stuff goes south, we as leaders sometimes go, she did it. It was her. Get her. We got to have the intestinal fortitude to have their backs. Because without that, you won't have trust. And if you don't have trust, none of this stuff's going to work. And you got to have trust in the organization. And that's really hard. Because you guys go down this path, then we say go down that path. And then you go down this path and we say, how about you go back down this path? You got to have trust and faith in the leaders above you. And they got to have the intestinal fortitude to, when it goes bad, to stand up and go, that's on me. So, go ahead. All of that builds a culture of innovation. All of that builds a culture like we built in the pill, where we're trying to operationalize procurement innovation. You got to have all those things in order to be innovative, in order to dare to try to win, to dare to finance the future. Because you guys got a lot to do. As we said, it all starts with people, and it all starts with the leadership. Keep going. Y'all need real-time, consistent data, don't you? Go ahead. How about in this department we get to a place where we make fact-based decision-making rather than anecdotal-based decision-making? Well, I saw it in one place, so it must be true across the department. We do a lot of that in this department. I'm guilty of that. In order to make analytics-based decision-making, you got to have data. And an apple's got to be an apple's got to be an apple across the department. And all of you components who believe you're special, you're not that special. And then we do need a modernized financial system that will improve security, that will provide better reporting, that will get rid of the 3 general ledgers that the Coast Guard currently has. I've heard that's bad. And will sustain the Herculean effort that you guys have done to maintain 6 straight audits. Go ahead. Remember that personnel system we talked about? It's going to take people willing to win, willing to take a risk to deliver on it. Workforce 2.0, we're going to get there. Where we make it more efficient to get you the clearance so we can get you on the job. By the way, all of y'all who bitch, moan, and complain about personnel security, you can raise your hand. I bitch, moan, and complain about it too. Think about their business. Do they get it wrong one time? Do they ever get it wrong? They don't. At the same time, you've got to do it fast because we want our people. We want them on board. So that securing the workforce